repeat after me. God has given me everything I need for the season I'm in. And this is where I want to get you to really embrace your now. Even if the now that you have right now is not the now that you want to be in a year down the road. I always used to do teachings with our interns at the church, Brendon, and I would open it up to question and answer. And there was always something along the lines of, I feel God called me to be an amazing songwriter, or I feel God has called me to make movies, or I feel God has called me, so it's a dream, which I respect, because God called me to be a pastor when I was 16.
Right.
And I felt it, and I sensed it, and I glimpsed it, and I didn't know how it was going to happen, but here I am in front of these interns, and they're going, what do you do when God gave you a dream? And I landed on this saying that I used to tell them, and it was kind of a testimony of my own life. I said, everything that God unlocked in my life that was next was a result of being fully committed to my now. In other words, all of this vision about the future, did you ever think that you would pastor a church that would have this impact on the world or write books or anything? In a sense, yes, I had dreams and I had hopes and I wanted to be used by God. But it was showing up to, teach the Bible to 20 kids.
Right.
At Santee Circle Baptist Mission. It wasn't even a chartered church yet. It was Santee Circle Baptist Mission. And it was the kids that were brought in on the van from neighborhoods where, they didn't have any parents dropping them off at church, so we went to get them. And their attention spans were horrible, and they didn't want to be there for the Bible. They just want to come get the food and play kickball.
Yeah.
That's where it started.
You had a direction, not a fully formed, perfect dream.
And don't you think people are over-obsessed with the dream and sometimes unwilling to just follow the direction that they have for this day?
Yeah, they want to, when we get in trouble, we want a perfect picture. It's like, I won't begin until I have a perfect picture. I won't begin until I have the perfect skill. I won't begin until I have the perfect plan. And I think so much of what I learned from reading the Bible is that often God kind of set these folks out in a direction, and he didn't describe the full-on thing to them. It's kind of like, I need you to go over here, and I need you to go over there, and now you go in strength, and you go over here. But it wasn't like, here's everything that's going to happen when you get there. It's not like he teased everyone. He's like, I want you to go over there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you hang out for 40 years. Yeah. It was more of like, I need you to go in this direction. And I think that a lot of people find real strength in their life when they say, oh, I need to do that. I need to move in that direction. Move in that direction with faith and in trust. And I also think that thing I get from reading the Bible related to this chapter is that he gave direction, but he also gave struggle.
Yeah.
There was never like you just glided into the promised land. It was just like, how many times does Saul have to try to kill David before you realize, oh, he didn't just say, hey, you're king. It's like you realize there's this journey, and that struggle is a part of it. And a lot of maturity in life happens when suddenly you stop bemoaning the struggle and hating the struggle and getting mad at the struggle, and you start to realize that the struggle is absolutely part of it for your character development, for your relation with God, for your ability to cope and do better in the next struggle. And so I was telling people in high performance, I'm like, don't be surprised at the struggle. I mean, if working with a fighter, I'm like, don't be surprised you just got punched in the face. Don't be surprised you're in round 4 and your legs are giving out. Don't be surprised about the inevitable. And the inevitable is that there will be struggle, and there's inevitable, you'll be backed. You'll be backed.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised, you'll be backed. Don't be surprised there'll be struggle. And that's why I love this chapter, because you went into this idea of like, help me fail.
Yeah.
And when you went in there, I was like, okay, this is turning on.
If you read it, let me give you a little bit more color, okay? I hope you've read the book, and if not, I hope you get the book so that you can just get this back in your heart over and over again. Because some of my lessons that come to me don't come when I'm just sitting down reading the Bible or studying a commentary. It'll be something I'll hear somebody say and I'll go, ugh. Oh, that's kind of interesting. This guy comes over to lift weights with me last year, and he brings his spotter with him. Now, this guy's a professional bodybuilder. But I know that the moment that stood out to me was when he was maybe on his like 12th or 13th rep on a shoulder press, and he said to his spotter, 3 words, help me fail. Now he's like at the end of his rep, what they call like the effective rep. I don't know all the terminology, but you know, it's always the rep that you can barely do that produces the growth. Like if you want to build strength and muscle, the first 10 reps that you did easily aren't building any muscle.
Yeah.
It's the one that you thought you couldn't do. Yeah. That's where the growth starts. So he gets to that point, he does a really hard rep, and then he goes to do another one and he tells his spotter, help me fail. And I thought, that's interesting. If somebody's spotting me, I say, give me a spot. Or I might say, help me, or I need a little help. But he was so specific, help me fail, that I realized he was saying naturally, I understand that growth happens at the point of failure, not before. In order for my muscle to grow, I have to fail with good form. Now that's important. Like I'm not a workout expert, but don't be breaking your back trying to just fail. You can fail and fall on the floor and knock your teeth out if you don't know what you're doing. That's why he had a spotter. He's saying, I need to push through what I think I can do, and I need to get through that, but I can't cheat it or I'll hurt something else. So I need you to help me through this rep that I don't think I can do. Make sure that I'm going to be okay at the end of it, because that's how my muscles will adapt and I'll get stronger for the next one. So I use that for an analogy where in my life, I'm coming up every day. I mean, every day I'm coming up on a mood, an attitude, a fear, a failure, a disappointment, an interaction. Let's keep going. All the things that we all run up on where it feels like I completely blew it. Or there that is again. Or I'm still weak. I thought I'd gotten over that. I thought I was through that. I thought I was better than that. What was a big shift for me in my mindset was not only the first mindset, I'm not stuck unless I stop, like push through it, but to know that that's where God does the most growing in me, is the moments where I actually feel like I didn't do it that well. I didn't do it that good. I have preached so many sermons where I got off the stage and thought, God, you showed it to me. It was so beautiful, but I didn't get it to them like you showed it to me. And then I might hear from somebody 4 months later, hey, you remember that sermon you preached that? And I'll go, yeah, I remember it. It was a mess. And they'll go, man, that saved my marriage. And I realized that at the moment that I was feeling the worst about it, God was doing the most. In the pandemic, we had nobody in the room, and there's this auditorium with thousands of seats. And there were 5 people. There's Holly and a few staff and the camera people, and I'm preaching, and I walked off stage and I felt so weird, like I'm used to preaching to a lot of people. And I get off the stage and somebody meets me backstage and says, how does it feel to preach to the biggest crowd you ever preached to? And I'm like, that's not funny, man. It's really awkward. I'm up there preaching to nobody. And they said, no, there were more people watching online today than any crowd that you've ever preached to, all in just that service. You just preached to the most people you ever preached to. And it was when I was seeing the least that I was ministering the most.
Wow.
And I want to get this in your heart as we close this Mindset Masterclass, not as we close this process, because it is a daily decision that you have to make. Which me will I be? Which you will you do? You're not done choosing. It's not a one-time event. I want to give you this last little nugget for the seasons where you're struggling. It may not even just be one rep. It may not even be just one day. It may not even be just 1 month. You may go through long stretches of time, with a little reprieve, but you might say, this is mostly a struggle. The stage of life my kids are at right now, this business challenge relative to my industry, this rhythm of my life that feels completely unsustainable. And while I don't always think that we should seek out more struggle, I think we have to know that when we struggle, God gives strength. If you can know that in those moments and say to God, the greatest 3-word prayer that I never heard, help me fail. I don't ask God to help me fail. I want him to help me win, help me succeed, help me crush, help me kill, help me destroy, I want to win.
You're saying help me stretch. Help me grow.
Help me grow.
For those who are like an aversion to fail, but I think it is important that
I chose the language help me fail because it's inevitable that you are going to feel like you're failing, but maybe you're not. That's what I think is so interesting about you being a success coach, is that Some people go, well, a success coach, is that really scriptural to success? Well, first of all, God told Joshua, I'll give you good success. The kind of success that God gives, a good success where you make a difference for him and you don't rip your life apart. I mean, you wrote a whole book called High Performance Habits about people who are not just succeeding over here and then making a mess of their relationships or destroying their health. God wants to bring all these things to integration in our life. But I think just as important as what's our definition of success is the question, what's your definition of failure? Who said it failed?
Right.
We talked in an earlier masterclass about disappointment, and disappointment is relative to time. And when you remove the element of time, you don't have to be disappointed because it's going to happen and it's in God's hands.
Yeah.
So what do you walk people through when they're experiencing what they perceive to be failure, but you know as a coach, this is a growth moment. This is a growth season.
Yeah. I think the first part is always, as I said earlier, just remove the surprise from people. It's like they're so shocked that they had a bad performance. I was like, you've been on tour for 3 years. You didn't think one of them you were going to suck? Or you just remove like the struggle and the failure. It is going to be there. And it is a personal definition. You thought you failed, but 15,000 people chanted. You thought you failed, but you weren't arrested the next day. You thought we have these cataclysmic things about failure, and we always realize failure is a personal definition. So first I want to go, why were you surprised? Second, what is your definition? Tell me, what does that mean that you failed? And what's interesting, when people use the terminology of failure, they drop into the fixed mindset right away because they believe that the failure stopped something. I failed. And it's just like this defined event, and their progress stopped and their growth will stop. And so their definition of failure often comes with like a stop sign. And I have to say, oh, there's no stop sign. That was an incident in life. Tomorrow there's gonna be 40 other incidents. That was one struggle, you're gonna have another 1,000. So there was no stop sign. It was something that occurred, but it occurred in the stream of life. And now you're downstream of that difficulty, and now you're gonna face another boulder that's similar. Okay, how are you gonna navigate this one? Because that's what that gave you. That difficulty gave you navigation instructions. It wasn't a failure, it was a navigation instruction manual. It was like,
I love that.
Hey, okay, you hit this thing, it didn't go right. That boulder is going to appear in the stream again, probably a lot of times until you learn, right? So now you know the boulder's coming up. Well, let me skill up. Let me learn how to navigate that. Let me learn how to use my oar and snap my hip in the kayak to pop around that boulder.
Yeah.
Let me skill up so next time I face it, I'm a little stronger.
Yeah.
I'm a little smarter. I'm a little more wise. And so that's a developmental standpoint. It doesn't say, I stopped there, it's forever fixed, I'm always gonna be ruined here. It says, that's probably gonna come up again. Let me teach myself, how would the best self deal with it? How would I skill up to deal with it better? It's taking a struggle that's inevitable, and it's equipping ourselves for the future. And maybe what came out of that struggle is I'm gonna equip myself to be kinder next time. I'm gonna equip myself to be more patient. I'm gonna equip myself to develop a skill that I can do this or that, so that it doesn't feel so harsh or surprising or awful next time, because that's maturity, as we get better at things.
Yeah.
Like you do as a speaker, right? My metaphor for that would be, I trained myself to speak to a small group, and then a slightly bigger group, and a slightly bigger group, and a slightly, the problem was I was, probably level of 1,000 people. I still felt like I wanted to throw up before going out there.
Yeah.
And I had to say, I need to train myself to be in a good place to handle life's challenges. And that's what I want people to hear, is like, the struggles are inevitable. Train yourself to be in a good place, learning from your past lessons, and preparing yourself now for the struggle that you're in. Because the season that you're in, which is why I love the chapter title here, it's like the season that you're in, you're equipped, you're emboldened, you got backing, and you have to step in faith and stay in motion and not hit the stop sign.
Step in faith, because the struggle is not a stop sign. It's a strength builder. It's a struggle builds strength. So write these two down. Struggle builds strength. Not all struggle. Some struggle, you're struggling because you're stubborn. Like, you're not supposed to still be struggling with this. You're supposed to apologize. Quit trying to prove you're right. But when the struggle is something that God is taking you through and leading you through, it's going to build strength.
Don't put a stop sign on the struggle.
Don't put a stop sign on the struggle.
Especially when it's bad and you didn't want it. I mean, people, I know you minister to people who've their struggle or their challenge in this season, they lost a child. And when you tell them, well, just be strong through it, it sounds so flippant. But sometimes when you say, there will be strength, you'll be provided for, but also don't stop there. You know, don't forget you do have maybe another child, or don't forget that your life doesn't have to stop because they were called. And so I think it's a matter of when our struggles hurt us and there's no growth from them is when we put that stop sign and we think that ended our life, that ended our progress, that ended our reputation. And so when I say don't put a stop sign on a struggle, it's not trying to say that anyone ever wanted those terrible things that happened to us that are our struggles and problems. It's saying when you have that terrible thing and that awful thing, and you can't find the strength.
Yeah.
When they hear guys like us say, well, there's strength there, and they're like, I can't find, there's no strength that came from this awful, I lost my dad. There's no strength from that, Brendon. I go, yeah, it doesn't feel like it. And you might be right, but don't stop living, because your dad didn't want you to stop living. He doesn't want you to stop living. And so the most important thing when you say that there's a season for everything and that God is with you there is don't put stop signs on the struggle.
I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you took a page of notes, and there's so much more available. Go to dothenewYou.com right now. Let me know your takeaway. Can't wait to see you soon.